This is Leading with Spirit, the show that gives you an in-depth look at topics like what it takes to navigate your spiritual journey, how to heal yourself and grow your spiritual gifts, and balanced practices to expand your business and your spiritual leadership. I'm your host, Spirit Bird, shamanic teacher, healer, and author, here to guide you on your journey to becoming your most potent spiritual leader. Have you been hearing the call to expand your spiritual gifts and step into your next level of conscious leadership? If you're a coach, healer, or a spiritual leader, you can learn more about shaman school and growing your spiritual business on our website, holtonhealingarts.com, or send me a DM at Holton Healing Arts. Hello and welcome to the first episode of Leading with Spirit. I'm Spirit Bird, also known as Katie Joe, and this is a show about healing, growing your spiritual gifts, and your spiritual business. And before I jump in, I just need to say that right before I sat down to do this first episode, I started meeting so much resistance, actually since this morning, since last night. When I knew that I was going to sit down to do this today, I kind of started not freaking out, but really disconnecting from any sort of motivation or inspiration for why I am here. And I just wanted to share that because since then, what has been going through my head is, is this the right thing? Does this even matter? Is this just another podcast? Am I just trying to be like everybody else? Am I going to get bored doing this? Is this going to be boring? I feel trapped with my commitment to show up here with you weekly. And I just wanted to name that because after 15 years of working with individuals and doing psychic and shamanic healing work, I have learned that the self-doubts and the questions don't actually go away, but we do learn how to navigate them. We learn which ones need to be picked up and looked at and which ones are just noise in our system that is old beliefs or old patterns or ego trying to keep us stuck where we are, trying to protect us and keep us from moving forward, from entering into a place and a type of life that might be new to us. And, anything that is unknown is usually scary. So oftentimes we stay in the known, even if it's not actually what serves us in the best way. So by learning how to navigate the doubts and the fears, we can really learn how to look at what is wanting to be healed or transformed, what's ready to be healed and transformed, and make the best decisions in support of that. And why does that matter? So we can be our full self. So we can be our true selves, our whole self. So we aren't cutting out pieces of our being and sticking them in the corners of our soul or burying them to make sure that they're never, ever, ever seen by anybody. And really, again, we're trying to protect ourselves, but that's also what makes our soul ache by burying parts of who we are. It's what makes our heart ache. And even though it can be scary sometimes to unearth those parts and bring them forward, it's also the best medicine. So why does being your full self matter? Because that's how we find harmony on our planet. Doing this for ourselves is how we give others permission to do it too. It's so much easier usually for most of us for us to give others the same things that we can't give ourselves. And that's what's changing. That's what we're changing as conscious spiritual entrepreneurs. And that is part of the purpose of this podcast as well, to show up and bring all of the parts of me forward and help support you in your growth and doing the same as well. So in this podcast, we'll be talking about learning and developing your spiritual gifts, bringing the spiritual and we'll say maybe the ordinary together, and growing your spiritual business so you can live a happy, thriving life, do work that makes an impact and serves, and also brings you joy. I'll be sharing personal stories talking to other conscious entrepreneurs. I'm curious and I want to know more about how they found their purpose, how others are making a living doing what they really, really love, how they're bringing spirituality into their daily lives, how they're working through the healing work required to really show up and bring your fullness forward. What even is the healing work that's required? And while I'll be curious about learning more about how other people are doing this and sharing with you how I've navigated some of this, also bringing it all back to practical things that you can do to make moves in your life. Because even though we can learn a lot through doing our deep healing work, we also have to take action steps. And I am constantly wondering, how come some people succeed and others don't? When they have the same skills or the same gifts. And that's really what I want to know more about, so we can uncover what really is happening and some of the best ways that we can become our own coach to bring our magic self forward. So today I want to share with you my why. Why am I even doing this show? And why am I offering shaman school, and how I found that purpose in the first place. But before I jump in, I want to share a special offer with you. Since this is my first show, I'm promoting it along with the show. And I'm asking my listeners to rate and review this podcast. So this helps us, and it also helps the teachings get out and get to the people who are really ready to take the next step. And in exchange for your rate and review, I'm going to be giving away my spiritual business kit. So it has 10 spiritual and shamanic tools that I've used every time I step forward in my spiritual leadership and take my business to the next level. So rate and review the podcast, take a screenshot of it, and DM me or email me so I can get that free guide over to you. Plus, super exciting. So everybody who rates and reviews the show in the month of June will be entered to win my Foundations of Shamanism self-study course. So this is a $1,500 course that you'll get for free. I've never given it away before, and I really am super excited to be sharing it with a lucky winner. It is part of the celebration of stepping forward and doing this work. And I find that life tends to lead us, or at least lead me, around like a sultry mistress at times. And I notice wherever I'm shut down, she awakens a new desire. And for someone like me who is very spiritually attuned and well-versed, I never thought how much healing I would experience from opening up to my magical CEO self, to my businesswoman self. Like, what the heck? I couldn't have thought that this was part of the path. It was also a huge part of resistance. And so I'm learning that wherever I'm holding resistance in my life, life will seduce me and lead me over to meeting that part of myself that I want to keep cut out. So I resisted for a really long time, like probably a good 10 years. I even played around with other entrepreneurial endeavors, but I knew they weren't going to work because I didn't have real purpose behind it. And throughout those years, my life was like pretty good overall. I had good friends, had a roof over my head, got local food, had sort of flexible jobs. Often they weren't really paying that well or challenging my personal growth. But, again, overall, comparatively, life was pretty good. And I really felt a pull the whole time. Like I had something else that I was here for, to show up and to do. And I could feel my heart sort of dying little by little while I was trying to figure out what that was and how to bring it forward. But it's hard, it's hard to feel grateful or excited when our soul is calling us to do something else, even when we look around and things seem like they're mostly fine. And I promise you that the calling or the nudge does not go away. It just gets louder and sometimes more aggressive. And we have, and we have real life things to navigate that make it feel like we're up against impossible odds sometimes. And through doing some of my own personal healing work and working with others, I began to see and get messages from spirit around my like bigger purpose. My purpose really is to ready humans for galactic travel. I already journey and astral travel all over all the time. It's one of my gifts, but I'm also here to help humans evolve so that they can actually show up in the same way that they do in this planet, where we start to hear a call and begin to trust the universe and show up where we need to be, when we need to be there, even when it doesn't make sense. We'll start to be doing that galaxy wide, maybe more at some point. And I know that that's really far out there, but also I just want to name that that is a really big part of my motivation and why I'm doing what I'm doing, because I'm deeply connected to that real inner knowing. And it's clear that it's my job, but it's also a job that I will not see complete in this lifetime. And in that way, there's a way I can actually relax and focus on putting the pieces together that will help set up that result instead of trying to attain it in this lifetime. And there's more than one layer to the job. So I also have a purpose and a job for right now. Most immediately in this lifetime, it's simply helping people expand their awareness. This will help ready us for bringing in our other gifts and opening up our capacities as we evolve as a species, right? And I have an even more immediate purpose, and it's building a spiritual business. Although I have a pretty long history of training in healing work, having like a really formal business is fairly new to me. That's in the spiritual modalities that I'm really gifted in and, enlivened by sharing. And the main reason I was able to build the business from scratch with pretty much like almost no money and launch it to 6 figures in under 2 years is because I figured out how to get my calling to motivate and fuel my action instead of using the calling and purpose as sort of like a carrot that's out in front that I'm chasing. So moving the calling to really become a fire burning inside of me instead of a result that I'm chasing. What also helped is I knew how to move through my blocks by taking action now, even if it didn't seem like the action that I was taking was directly related or the quickest path to my ultimate goal. I have learned to tend to what's coming up in my life right now without letting go of my ultimate purpose and goal. So there's some major blocks that most of us come up against when we are in this place. And knowing how to move through them and take action is one of the main pieces that I feel separates the dreamer from the dream weaver, the one that gets to see their creation in this reality. With this podcast, with my spiritual coaching, and with my shaman school, I'm interested in integrating the spiritual and the ordinary or the everyday life. It is also a major motivator behind what I do. I find that oftentimes in spiritual modalities, there's a way that it kind of becomes this escape where we go on a retreat or to a workshop, or, we like leave our lives to go be spiritual for a period of time in an enclosed space, which is fine. And also then we come back and then we're sort of back to our regular life. And so what I'm really interested in helping us bring those things together to bridge that gap so we can have more harmony in our lives and in our systems and in our politics and our inner world, right? And in our families and communities. So I'm very interested in the cosmic and the practical. And so I want to share with you today some of the common blocks that you might be facing to help you really get started into, making the decision to pursue the calling that you have. Even if you're not totally clear on what that is, life will usually give us some information and excitement to help guide us towards that knowing. And these are really true Whether you're brand new to this work, or you're already running a beautiful, sustainable spiritual business, and are hearing the next call in growth and in your healing life. Because as you might know, we don't really ever get to an end. We just keep growing. And so even if you've already built a successful business, you'll find that you'll be enticed and called to do things differently than you were doing it before, or step out onto a new edge or create a new offer. So first and foremost, one of the most common things, of course, is, that we feel a calling, but we feel like we don't have enough time or money to do the things that we really want to do. And again, I want to give practical steps for you here, because if you're looking at something that you believe will help you get to where you need to be, but you feel like you can't afford it yet, then actually the first step for you to do is to start working on your money story or working on your current situation so that you can open that up. And I'll definitely be sharing a lot more with money work and how to move through some of that in future episodes. But just as a starting point, just know that even if you're working on your money story, that is a start on moving towards your calling and your purpose, right? So if you're feeling like your current situation isn't supporting you, then you can look at what you would like to do to change that situation. Right? Or if you feel like you're doing the right things but still feel blocked, you can start working on some of the money mindset pieces, right? The other place where a lot of people struggle here is, again, with time. And of course, we're all pretty busy people, especially if you are working and have a family. And so the idea of also starting a business while you're doing that might seem kind of like a stretch. And also, this is what I'm interested in exploring here, because while I understand how it feels like a stretch, also it's been done over and over and over again by many people, sometimes single parents. And so, what is the difference between someone who is stuck in that mindset and somebody that actually is able to move through there? And this is another place where you can begin to take action now. It might not be the biggest step or, where you really want to be, but the point is to start moving towards it. And so your first step here might actually be practicing receiving support. If you are stretched for time, I definitely understand being a budgeter. I'm a budgeter myself. And if you're stretched for time, this is a place where you might begin to play around with, maybe you spend a little bit of money to, have somebody, watch the kids, or spend a little bit of money to have somebody clean the house or do some errands for you, or something that you normally would just easily be able to do yourself. But because of all of these things that we have to constantly do, they become, like blocks or reasons that we can't do the stuff we actually are really meant to do. And so instead of feeling like we're a victim to all of that stuff, we can actually just play with beginning to call in and actually receive support there. It also sends a signal to the universe that you're willing and you trust it, which is powerful messaging to send back out. And the other place that you can begin to change things pretty quickly is, especially around money and time mindset, is actually beginning by changing what it is that you're tracking or paying attention to. So if you find yourself really believing that you don't have time, and you might get to points in the day where you're like, here I am again. See, I never have enough time. Or here's another example of why, I can't get any help. Or here's another example of where nobody supports me. Or here's another example of like how it's just more bills. All of that is actually just going to be continuing to track the things that you don't want. So begin to shift that and begin to track what it is that you do want instead. So start paying attention to, how am I actually already receiving support? Right? And begin to try receiving a little bit more, seeing where you might be able to become more available to receive that. How am I actually being supported with money? How am I actually getting exactly what I need? Right? How are my needs being met? What is it like to have extra time? Start tracking that. Right. And you'll really be able to start opening things up, pretty quickly simply by making that one sort of mindset shift on what you're paying attention to. Of course, another big block here is that I hear a lot and that I've also gone through myself is that I'm not ready. I don't feel like I know enough yet, or I'm not qualified enough. And this one's a little tricky because in the coaching industry, they really have us sort of proclaim through, owning our own authority. And I feel like that's an important step into really stepping into your personal power and meeting the world. And also, most of the time, we actually do just need to know more or have a guide to help us navigate the spots that we, haven't developed much yet. Most of the time, we probably do need that. So this is a little bit tricky. So my advice, I guess, here is you still can start. And it's not like a finished thing. You won't ever get to the point where you're like, okay, I have done all of the work I need to do, and now I can do the thing. And if you are, interested learner, if you are fueled by knowledge and experience and depth and learning more about the mysteries of the universe, then you'll also continue to engage in getting more support and more training while you're also offering your work. And in fact, I've noticed that the best guides and facilitators, in my opinion, are both training with people who are further down the path, with teachers that are sort of past where they are now, and also teaching others who are maybe a few steps behind them. And this really creates like a collective momentum when we do this, where we get to feel empowered by what it is we're learning, and we also get to pass that on to people. So we get to experience ourselves both as the learner and as the teacher. The other way this has shown up in my practice is my practice, of course, has changed over time. So now I work with people over long periods of time. When I first started offering healing work, it was usually just when somebody asked, and it was just for a session here and there. And what I've learned through my growth is I'm just not really that interested in fluff in spirituality. Nor am I interested in Band-Aids and quick fixes. There's definitely a place for them. And I'm not interested in helping you just not be stressed for a day. I'm interested in helping really get in there and doing some of the deep, intricate work when you're ready for it. And there's a way that if I was looking back at originally when I started as a healer, I'd probably be like, well, that's crazy. Like, what were you doing, goofball? And also what I know is then I was still getting really powerful results. So again, that's what I've learned is like, as you grow, your practice is going to grow. And so this is what I also teach. Being able to move and change with what life is asking you to do and being available for that. Instead of trying to just attain one goal and become stagnant there, right? So I'm definitely grateful for where I started. I needed a jumping off point. And also, I know deeply the importance of continuing to train and find guides doing the same kind of work that you might want to be doing. And also, it's important. And again, I'm going to come back to part of this dance is being able to step forward and, sort of give yourself permission. And part of it is also, it is important to have some training and some experience and guides to help you navigate some of the tricky places that you're going to be in as a practitioner, or maybe you have been as a practitioner, because it's serious business when we are working with somebody that intimately and on that many different levels. It's important that we understand what it is we're navigating, what it is our clients are navigating, where we are as practitioners and where they are in their lives, and what process we're actually helping them move all the way through, again, versus just kind of giving Band-Aids or repeating the same process with everyone, regardless of who they are and what they're working with. So yeah, so there is definitely a place where there's the I'm not ready, I don't know enough. And here again, this is where we can have some simple action. Part of it is beginning to, become your own authority. And part of it is if you don't feel like you know enough, then get some support. Find some guides that will help you find that confidence and help you grow rapidly and learn more about the areas that you feel like you aren't qualified in yet. What a lot of other practitioners struggle with is the piece around sort of finding the right strategy, right? So this is the other part of what I'm going to be sharing here on the podcast is I've also done the dance with strategy and business ideas and structure. And I find a lot of spiritual people want to sort of bypass the strategy piece or the marketing piece or learning how to really show up and connect or learning how to talk about what you do in a way that actually seems desirable. And I get it because I have had a lot of my life avoiding conventions. And so there's a place where, I also resisted that heavily. It felt like I was somehow, like giving in or sacrificing integrity or something to learn this type of work or bring this part of who I am into my life and business. And what I did and what a lot of spiritual practitioners want to do is they want to skip over that piece of the marketing and sales piece. And again, I get it. I wanted to also. And so what we try to do is like bypass that whole thing and try to just sort of like call in what we want and, skip over the part where we learn a whole aspect of doing business and operating in this world. And it's also part of being human. Right. And so if you haven't done that kind of work in your life, then that's going to be one of the places where you're being invited to grow. But you might be on the other side of it too. And so this is the other side that I've seen. And this is where I'm seeking a balance in my own life and in my business and in what I teach and what I'd like to share with you and explore with you here as well. So on the other end, sometimes we end up becoming we think we're looking for like the pill, right? We're looking for the thing, the business strategy that's going to like break the code, that's going to allow us to break through. And so the strategy for a successful business or life is really less about a formula or copycat sales strategies and more importantly about inner knowing and inner trust. So if we keep trying to duplicate what others are doing without discovering it on our own or learning how to trust our own inner knowing, we're going to keep getting bogged down with dead ends and misconnections and, investing time and money in something that we think is going to save us when what we really need to be investing time and money in more than anything, again, is ourselves, our self-trust, and being able to be in communication with the parts of us and in communication with all of life too. So if you're going to pick one, better to focus on what will foster and strengthen your inner knowing and self-trust than business or even like healing methods and strategies that aren't actually embodied, that are just sort of like regurgitated from someone else. And then probably the biggest thing that I think that I broke through with when I finally did begin to show up and share from what I'm dealing with and connect to the right people and really be teaching the stuff that I'm here to teach and share is where we end up thinking that permission to do what we're here to do comes from outside of us, right? So when we keep looking to external things to tell us that it's the right time or that we're ready or that we're qualified or that we're worthy or that we're hireable, because that permission actually comes from within and from our agreement with the spirits. And this often, when we look externally for permission, what that often does, it leads us to waiting for like a sign or things to just happen or to be invited into something. when actually what is needed, the biggest sort of dividing factor is the decision to take action. I was thinking about this recently. So earlier on in some of my shamanic training, I was in a ceremony with a group. We're gathering together for a specific ceremony, a specific type of work. And part of the practice was, it was dark in there, and essentially you needed to figure out how to get free from binding, and work with your spirit guides to assist you in that process. And I remember the first time I did it, when the ceremony was concluding and I saw other people, like a lot of people had actually gotten free. And I was like, what the heck? Because I didn't. And I had an experience, and it was a powerful experience, but I didn't get the result that I thought I was going to get. And so I was confused and amazed, like, how did they do that? That's so incredible. And then as I was talking to people and we were sharing more, I realized that the first time I thought that the spirits were just supposed to do it for me, that I was supposed to just ask for help and then the help would come if I was worthy or ready or something. And what I learned is that spirits will unlock the door, but we have to step through it. Actually, what the spirits will do is show you that the door was never locked in the first place. And I had a similar lesson when I really finally began to acknowledge that I was both called and wanted to be a healer and a spiritual leader. It was a part of me that I greatly wanted to meet, but tucked away for a really long time as well. I thought I wasn't allowed to want it. I definitely thought I was not allowed to say it out loud. And I thought it was just supposed to happen to you if it was meant to happen. I thought that people would start just asking you to do work for them. And sometimes that's true. I have found that to be true, where I'll be invited into doing work, and I thought that that was the only way. And not to mention, there is a lot of rhetoric from people around what you're allowed to do and not allowed to do as a healer, and what like true healers do and true healers don't do, or what true shamans do and true shamans don't do, right? And I can say that ignore all of that. You've got to listen to what feels right for you, and again, what the spirit world is communicating to you and through you, right? And so once I realized and acknowledged it, I was doing some work with a friend and we were working on some higher self stuff. And it was the first time I was really invited in to like say out loud this piece. And it was super scary to just say it to a friend, and we were already doing healing work together. So it wasn't like some big shock or some big surprise. And it was still really challenging for me to say out loud because I had so much judgment on how you're not supposed to do that. And I realized once I acknowledged it and started taking action, life could actually meet me with what I needed and what I wanted, and also who I was here to help and who was here to help me. And allowing myself to want to have a business and want to support myself, which is not a crazy thought. It's not some sort of thought or desire that is unethical, right? So allowing myself to have a business and want to support myself with it is what allowed me to create a really beautiful offer and an amazing school with incredible students, and be able to help move people through old beliefs and shatter experiences that they thought that would never come true, right? And work with people who are now also offering really amazing work and doing their best work and sharing their spiritual medicine. If I thought I was going to be all the way from point A to point Z on the first try, I would have given up. But I stayed with it and continued to do the personal healing work and continued to get guidance where I needed it, right? Some areas I'm good, other areas where I'm not good, get guidance, right? And as I'm sharing this and, where I'm trying to draw up a picture is that life won't just stop and give us this like clean plate that says, here you go, here's the path, do the thing now. There won't be any other problems. So now you can do this. Life will keep happening. And it's our job to actually meet life with our own desires and call in what we want. And then also meet that with what wants to happen, what life is asking for us to do. And where those two places meet, when we can meet life there, that's where things start to happen. And where most of us get stuck is we look at where we want to be, and it feels like it's so far away that we actually just don't start and we don't take action, and we actually stay sort of in indecision and continue to stay externally oriented for permission or for ease or whatever it might be. And so I know from my personal journey, if I had stopped every time I didn't meet a goal, or every time I ran into a road bump, or every time my life got busy, to evaluate whether it looked like it was going okay or not, I would have given up lots of times. In fact, I was looking through some old journals, and I had like a goals practice that I did. I took in a business workshop, and one of the first things they had us do is like, where do you want to be in like a month? Where do you want to be in 3 months, in 6 months, in a year, in like 2 years, and 5 years, or something like that, right? And so I was like trying really hard to just be as open and like think as big as I could. And it was quite a stretch at the time. And it was like, oh man, if I could be at this income level and have this kind of home and be living this kind of life, that would be absolutely incredible, you know? And it was so interesting for me to look at these old goals, because when I wrote that essentially 5-year plan or goal setting activity, again, with goals that at the time seemed almost impossible, you know, they were close enough that I could still sort of imagine it, but they were still so far away that it was still sort of hard to imagine it. And if I had looked at my month goal, I wouldn't have made it. If I had looked at my 3-month goal, I wouldn't have met it. If I looked at my 6-month goal, I wouldn't have met it. If I looked at my year goal, I still wouldn't have met it. I still wouldn't have gotten even close to what I had called in for myself for the first year. But I stuck with it. And then I've already, after the first 2 years, I've already passed what I had for my 5-year goal. So even though I didn't get close to any of my goals in the first year plus, I'm actually now beyond the goals that I set myself for 5 years from when I started. And so I just want to name it, because there's a way that we can, again, this comes to the indecision and not taking action. And so don't be tempted to evaluate whether it's time to stop every time something doesn't work out. You've got to find that purpose or that drive. And again, you might not even be totally clear what it is. And it's also going to be always changing. When I started, I wasn't like, oh, I'm here to help facilitate galactic travel. Like, I was just like, I don't know. I just like, my heart wants to do this. And I feel like I can't not do it. And I know that I have a purpose, and I know that I want to, help change things in the world, even if it's in my own little way. And so I just kept following that desire, and it led me in the right places. So that's where it starts, really, the commitment to follow that desire. And and let your evaluation stretch out over a long period of time. Because if we stop every time to see whether it worked or not, it's not going to work. So the point is that transformation in your life and with your clients comes from inspiration and mixed with dedication. We can't shame ourselves or restrict ourselves into growth and change, but we can inspire ourselves into growth and change. You have to have dedication to what inspires you, to what excites you, to what gives you joy, rather than being dedicated to escaping something you don't want or fixing something that you feel is broken. So if you take away anything from today, it's to find one place in your life where you can start taking action. Really, I guess the first step is really just go ahead and acknowledge the call to you out loud or in your journal. At least like give yourself permission to acknowledge that call. and then find one place where you can take action. So that can look like, am I on money mindset blocks? Then let me get some money mindset help. Is it like do I need to be finishing some old business or some old stuff that's going on in my life that I need to complete because it's actually holding me back and draining me? Is one of my first steps asking for help or support? Maybe one of your first steps is actually committing to taking 1 hour a week for time to yourself, for whatever would give you joy or whatever meets your needs or desires. Maybe your first step is actually investing in support, giving yourself that gift of that you are actually worth investing in. And maybe, again, the first step is actually deciding that you're going to start. And maybe telling somebody so that you can be accountable to your own goals. And ultimately, what it comes down to is you also have to consider how not taking action today pushes the dream away even further. Because again, life isn't going to pause for us to make it clear. We have to meet life in the action and in the steps and the desire and the determination. And I know the dream and the calling that you have is really meant to be a reality. And we don't have these dreams and desires because they're not meant to be reality. And what you are really dreaming into, what you feel is like calling you forward, it's almost magnetizing you forward, is also fiercely needed in this world. You in your fullness is fiercely needed in this world. It's not that it's that you have to, if you don't start now, you don't ever start. So now is the time, right? That it's something that you get to someday, that's the belief that needs to go. So make that commitment to yourself and start now. And don't give up. So that's all that I have for you today. Join me the same time next week, where we'll be talking about what's not working in spiritual training and how we are dedicated to changing the industry and continuing to evolve in what life is asking us to do. Plus, we'll have our first member query starting next week. So each week, we'll be taking one question from our members and audience. So stay tuned for that. And you can always submit questions to us. You can DM me or share in my private Facebook group, Leading with Spirit. And just a reminder, please rate and review the show. It would be super helpful to us and super helpful to our listeners and help us get the teachings out there so more people can get in alignment with the work that they're here to do, grow their spiritual gifts, and really bring their spiritual self forward. And of course, just as a reminder, when you rate and review our show, send me a DM of a screenshot of you doing that, and I will be sharing with you my free spiritual business kit. And again, that is the 10 spiritual and shamanic tools that I've used every time that I've stepped into my next level of leadership and business. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'll see you next time. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Leading with Spirit. If you did, please share the link for this episode with your biggest takeaway, tagging me at Holton Healing Arts. It would also support me if you subscribed and left a rating and review of the show so we can support more people living their highest purpose. Until next time, journey on.